Hi, all, and welcome to episode 54 of Plain Speaking Sanjiv. Today, I want to speak about my views, my personal views on the potential and economics of long haul, low cost travel, long haul LCC service. The reason why I'm speaking about this today is that number one, I've always had this on my mind as a topic I wanted to speak about. But in the last 24 hours or so, there's been a lot of buzz about Spicejet getting a designation to fly to the US and then to the UK, and there's a lot of speculation or expectation that that means they're about to launch flights, tomorrow. So, I just wanted to use this opportunity to explain how the designation process works, share my views on whether I think this is a good idea or not, and talk more generally about the prospects of long haul LCC travel. But first of all, the designation process, especially when it applies to countries like the US and the UK vis-a-vis India, is a fairly perfunctory process. It's like a check in the box. India has open skies with both the US and UK, which means that both sides countries can nominate any number of carriers or designate any number of carriers to fly. It's not actually a big deal. It's a paper process. It's a paper approval that needs to take place. It's essentially giving an NOC to the airline saying that you can go ahead and now apply for rights and for approval, regulatory approvals to fly to the other country. The complicated part starts now, where you need to then engage with the regulators of the other country, the US or the UK, and describe to them how you intend to fly, what aircraft you intend to use, share with them your safety records, allow them to do operational and financial audits, etc. It's a fairly long, lengthy process, takes several months normally. And thereafter the airline can begin operation. So this is just the first step of many steps. Do I think personally that it's a good idea for an airline like Spicejet to want to participate in the India, US, India, UK markets? In the short term, I think provided they can start operations very, very quickly, which again depends on where they're getting the aircraft from and who's operating it for them, it could make sense because right now supply is very constrained between India and the UK, India and the US. Third-party airlines, the sixth freedom carriers in the Middle East and Europe, are not allowed to carry connecting passengers between India and those countries. Traffic can only be taken by airlines belonging to either country on direct flights. So that means the supply is constrained. The demand is still, is there, the repatriation demand. So I think the yields are very strong, and there is potential to make money in this very unusual situation. However, I think the window is closing. I think demand is softening, and I think supply is increasing because now even the US and presumably soon the UK airlines will be allowed to carry passengers both ways, just like Air India has been in the past. And therefore, with more supply and with demand flattening or softening, the window will close soon. But if you can get in there at the right time, and I think the wet lease market should be a very attractive one right now because a lot of airlines have wide-body aircraft and crew lying idle. So they'll be willing to negotiate contracts where they don't really charge you the full price. They just want to get some contribution towards a fixed cost and not necessarily make a bottom line profit. So it could be a good time, good move, I think, to try to get into that market. Okay, but leaving COVID aside, on a longer term basis, I for one am a skeptic on the possibility of long haul, low cost travel being sustainably successful. The only parts of the world, only markets in the world where I've seen it succeed are when you've got a long haul LCC flying between two high cost countries with no low cost country or competition or hub in between. So, for example, if you're flying like Jetstar does between Australia and Japan, or like Scoot does between Singapore and Japan, there isn't any real low cost hub or competition, in the along the route for those markets. So if you can come up with a lower cost alternative to the high cost airlines that operate on either end, I think you can do pretty well in that. But if you look at Asia heading to Europe, there are lots of low cost markets in between. There's India, there's Middle East, there's a lot of capacity in economy class, and the economy class fares are usually very, very cheap. So it's very hard for a low cost airline, which is typically full economy, to compete and make money when you've got all these other carriers on the path who can take connecting traffic at very low fares, especially when you keep in mind that for the longer the flight becomes beyond a point, the more expensive it becomes to operate. Operating a wide body long haul flight for 10 hours, 12 hours is a very expensive proposition. Just the cost and weight of carrying the fuel required to fly the distance adds a lot to the cost of the operation. And the only way airlines have found that they can make money on such long flights, ultra long haul flights, is by having a very robust business class cabin where a significant premium can be charged, and that helps pay for the operating cost of the flight. Having an all economy or a business light or LCC kind of model on ultra long haul flights just doesn't give you the high enough average fare to be able to overcome the high costs that these operations generate. So count me as a skeptic on long haul low cost when you're flying between countries where either on one end there's a low cost country or there are low cost countries in between. Keep in mind that very famously, a former CEO of British Airways in the 90s, Rod Eddington, had said, when he was asked that, are you afraid of long-haul low-cost competition? He said, I'm not, because in the back of every 747, I have a low-cost airline, and he was referring to economy class. The way the pricing is done for economy class on long-haul flights, you're pretty much down at LCC pricing. So it's very hard to compete without having a good front cabin, without having connecting feed on both ends of the route, without having a network, without having alliances and partners, and without having differentiation to actually pull the high-yield traffic towards you. So that's it. So to recap, designation is just first step. It's an NOC. It's a multi-step process. If one can speed up that process by code sharing or partnering with a wet lease operator that already has permission to fly to either the UK or the US, maybe you can get to the market sooner. But if you want to fly that route yourself using your own aircraft, registration and crew, it's a many months process to get approvals. If it can be done quickly enough, I think Spicejet could make some positive return, but it'll be a short-term game. I don't think it can be long-term sustainable, and the reason is once COVID is gone, I think the FSCs will be able to perform much better as they've traditionally done on these markets, on these long-haul markets, than a long-haul LCC can. And therefore, I am skeptical on the possibilities or sustainable prospects long-term for a long-haul LCC operating out of India. And happy to get your comments. I know that there have been many views on this. I may be wrong. Only time will tell us, whether I was right or wrong. But that has been my view, and that is what I have seen. If you look at the fortunes of airlines that have tried to operate long-haul, low-cost to Asia, from Asia, airlines like AirAsia X, Norwegian, WOW Air, and so on and so forth, none of them really succeeded. So that's it. Hope you found this useful, and we'll speak again next episode. Take care.